welcome to the Dark Side of Soul podcast. This is Joe.
And this is Sean.
And since we started this small little show a year and a half ago, the big topic we knew we'd have to tackle, and everyone was asking us to tackle, is Korea's most notorious serial killer, Yoo Young-chul. We both have also been putting it off because we knew this was going to be a monster. We wanted to make sure that when we do this, that we don't half-ass it, that we'll do it as well as we could, because, you know, how many chances do you have to cover this topic? And it is an event in Korea that traumatized the society, I would say.
Yeah.
Still affects us today. And I'm going to go right off and say another reason I've avoided this is I know a lot of you listeners are big true crime fans, true crime aficionados. I'm not one. I kind of try to avoid these things, and there's a reason for it. I mean, I understand the appeal. I mean, it goes back. I understand the appeal. When my mother was first divorced and living on her own, she was nervous. She was living in the city, and this was the turn of the 90s when all over the US crime was really getting high. And so she got a police radio so she could listen to the police talking to each other, and she would go to sleep to that because it would make her feel safe. She wanted to know if something was happening, if it was happening near her neighborhood. And so that's one reason I think people are interested in true crime is the more you know, knowledge is power. Knowledge is safety. Others feel, a ghastly thrill like you would with a horror movie. And I understand that as well. My personal background with true crime is my previous marriage in the 90s is my wife was also obsessed with true crime. And I had gotten our first computer in our house, and I gotten our internet, and I taught her how to use the internet and the printer. And she used this to feed her obsession with missing children. And after a while, our bedroom was wallpapered in pictures of missing children. And she would spend all of her nights on the computer obsessed, tracking everything down. And then she would just rip a child's photo off the wall. And I said, "Oh, what happened?" They go, "Oh, they found her. She died." After seeing so many dead children for so long in the 90s, it's kind of made me kind of want to avoid the true crime thing. It kind of made me a little sad. As in, I've seen enough stuff in my life that I don't need to be reminded of it. But and then again, this is also a shield. This is also a way of preparing yourself for the world, of just knowing what's out there, but also understand that it's not everywhere. It's just good to be cautious. Because of that, my ex-wife was really getting paranoid, and she was really thinking predators were everywhere. She ended up becoming entering the police force and things like that, and she had issues. And she's fine now, she says, but she went through a bad time. And it was her obsession with true crime that contributed to it. Anyway, Sean, do you have any opinions about the topic?
Well, I was in Korea when the murders started, and when Yoo was caught, and I remember very.
We're talking
clearly,
about Yoo Young-chul when we say that. We're not talking about me.
not you, Joe.
You was caught.
You was caught. And I remember when, like, we'll go into the details, but when his different modus operandi, because he does have he had essentially two in terms of his victims, and
Two planned and one accidental,
right? And but when the second one came about, I remember very clearly at the time, there was no connection. They weren't linking. They thought it was two different murderers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that very clearly. And I remember speaking with my girlfriend at the time, her brother-in-law, or who became her brother-in-law. We were talking about it one day, and he's like, "Oh, did you hear there was such and such a murder?" And I was like, "Oh, that's terrible." I said, "By the way, whatever happened to the guy? He was killing all the elderly people." And he's like, "Oh no, didn't hear anything. I don't think they caught that guy." But anyway, there was this new guy that's killing, and we were talking. We had no idea we were talking about the same person.
A lot of people didn't. But even when he was targeting elderly people, the authorities were not connecting it, and I will explain why later. Before we go much further, I'll explain who this is. Yoo Young-chul. He's also known as the Raincoat Killer. He's not the Rainy Thursday murderer. That was someone else who was active around the same time and near that area, but it was not him. You might have heard of the Korean movie The Chaser. It's loosely based on him. But pointing out that talking about this, it might sound like it while we're profiling him, that I want to make clear we're not glorifying him. We're not putting him up on a pedestal as some genius type of killer, some Hannibal Lecter, so someone to be glorified. If we hope for anything, I want us to recognize the victims. Because in focusing on someone like a serial killer, it's not really. The murders don't end with the murder itself. It affects families. It affects the relatives, and the residents of the area where it occurred, and broadly a society as a whole. So you should, it helps that we face these things. But it's also many other types of murder crimes tend to be crimes of passion. In particular, those are kind of those. The difference between those and a serial murder destroys many relationships. It's one person destroying many, many relationships. And so the impact is far greater than that of other types of murders. And the act of fear it creates in society of the unknown or of the evil that exists in society. And people want to try to understand how this could happen. And at the bottom, I think many fear that they could be like that. That's why they want to look at that and see, like, how could someone be like that? And are we all capable of something like this?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it for a lot of people. It's like, how could someone do that? Like, I would never be able to do that. Or could I? I think I really do. And it does happen. Like, people, well, not serial killing, but people have psychotic breaks and they commit pretty grisly murders. But that's not the case here. This is not psychotic breaks. This guy was definitely, he was categorically a murderer. Yeah. So checked off all the boxes.
He does. And this is such a huge topic that we're planning this will be the first of 4 parts, 4 episodes we're going to cover because it's such a huge, huge topic. And every time, at least in my research, every time I found something more. And I say this, I see this in the scope of this is more of a story of Seoul and Seoul going through a lot of changes. Seoul's rapid urbanization and how there was a big break in society. I was just tonight reading an interview with a retired, I think it was a criminal psychologist who had actually interviewed over 900 murderers in Korea. And he really pointed out Yoo Young-chul as the worst of the bunch. And serial killers, and he did note that there was a break between the 90s and the 2000s, is that the murderers he interviewed from the 90s tended to be more crimes of passion, what he called conventional murders. Then when we hit the 2000s, he noted more serial killings. And we kind of pointed that out in our disasters series, that that serial killing started becoming a social problem around the turn of the century. I want to explore that even more. I think it's barely, that surface has really been just barely been scratched. That one expert touched on that very same topic we talked about back then, and I thought that was interesting. That the rapid urbanization of Seoul disconnected people, alienated people from society. I'm not copping out and saying, oh, it's society's fault for this happening. I mean, in the end, it is the person's fault. It does come down to responsibility of the person themselves. But just be aware of like where are we not hearing of these people before, and how are we hearing about them now? Societies before, I'm going to use Korea as an example. Older Korean society tended to revolve around the village, and everyone knew each other and everyone relied on each other. And then you go to this rapid urban setting and people don't know who their neighbor is, and it's alienating. You don't feel a connection to people, and you're trying to figure out how you fit in and what your worth is. And I want to consider that while we're talking about this. So let's get started. Mm-hmm. Yoo Young-chul was born April 18th, 1970. My brother was born on April 18th, but 1979. In Gocheong in Jeollabuk-do, North Jeolla Province. He was the youngest of 4 children. He had 2 older brothers and a sister who they say she was kind of a fraternal twin, or in that case, a sororal twin sister.
Non-identical.
Yeah. Father was a Vietnam vet. And a little trivia: Yoo Young-chul had O-type blood. Just in case you're curious. Keep that in mind. That kind of comes up in our 3rd episode. just put that in the margins a bit. Mm-hmm. Father was a Vietnam vet, and when he returned, he couldn't maintain his income after returning. Despite this, he did try to maintain 2 households. He got married, but he also had a mistress, and his wife was keeping the children while the father was mostly staying with the mistress, but he was trying to support both households. Also, he was an alcoholic and he was in poor health. And that's the formula for abusing your children. Mm. And so he abused his children, particularly Yoo Young-chul, whenever he's in a bad mood and whenever he was drunk. And note, he tended to use hammers. Some people use switches, some people use wooden spoons. This fucker used hammers to abuse his children. The family was so poor and they're having so many hardships that his mother actually considered killing him just to release the hardships. And that was something that was a problem way back. Was there was incidents of families finding ways of getting rid of their children because there's just too many mouths to feed. His father did end up divorcing his wife and marrying, got remarried when Yoo Young-chul was only 7. And he kept custody of the children. Keep in mind that it was up until fairly recently that in divorces, fathers tended to get custody of the children. He moved to Seoul, specifically in Gongdeok, Idong, Chudong, which is Mapo area. You might know Gongdeok Station. It's around there. It's one of, back then, especially, it was one of the poorer areas of Seoul. It was a slum district. It's right next to Aoge, which is still considered a poor district. That was kind of where the family in Parasite lived. If when they were asking the direct Bonjung-ho, where the poor family lived in Parasite, it was implied that it was Aoge around that area, Gongdeok. And it was a bunch of cardboard houses and such. There are a few of these types of villages all around Seoul for a long time after the war. And Gongdeok was one of them. They lived in an old wooden building that was built during the Japanese colonial period. It was only Tinpyeong. How would you say Tinpyeong? It's around the size of my studio, isn't it?
Tinpyeong, that's not very big. That's maybe 20 square meters, I think. Maybe about that big. Not very, like, let's see. So if
it's a studio apartment.
Oh no, there's 3.3 meters in a pyong, in one pyong. So it'd be 33 square meters.
Okay.
Small. That's tiny.
And that was divided into 2 rooms, a kitchen, and a cramped bathroom.
Right.
The father worked in construction sites, and it was, I was saying this neighborhood. It was in Korean, it's known as the Daldong neighborhood. Lots of unlicensed houses, and not much. There were houses that didn't have water or electricity. Father, like I said, was alcoholic. He drank away the money, gambled away the money. So basically the stepmother was in charge of the children. She also was violent towards them. Yoo Young-chul started elementary school in 1978. Teacher said he was just an ordinary kid, obeyed the rules, hard worker. Entered middle school in I think it was 1985, because it was his first year in middle school when his father was hit and killed by a drunk driver. By then, this is what I was trying to figure out. I can never figure out when his biological mother moved to Seoul. But by then, the biological mother had moved to Seoul and was also living in Gongdeok. And the rest of the siblings moved in with their mother. It was around then that he started coming out of his shell, because before then he was known as a very quiet child. And likely it's because his father was died and he was no longer being abused by his father, because he was bullied in middle school. By high school, he showed some talent in art and sports, specifically track and gymnastics. He liked to sing. In fact, he organized a singing group called Singal Tree. He was quite a talented painter, an artist. In fact, later on, after he was arrested and they were checking out, investigating his apartment, researching his apartment, he did have a sketchbook, and it had, according to journalists, very fine sketches in it. He's tried to get into Anyang Arts High School, but unfortunately, as an artist, he was also colorblind, so he didn't get in. And I'm just saying, in history, what is it with art schools? Art schools need to learn. Try to accept people that apply, because failed painters tend to become monsters. I know of one case in Germany. Guy didn't get into art school and got pissed off and ended up creating a World War II. Anyway, just saying, art schools. You have responsibility to society. Let people in.
Let them paint in black and white if they're colorblind. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
It's completely fine.
It's a pattern. I notice these patterns is like people who are psychopaths, sociopaths, there's a connection with them and being rejected from art schools. So instead, he enrolled in K High School of Technology. He hated it. This is when he started changing, started becoming delinquent. Now people will say, okay, the nature versus nurture thing. I think it was more of a socialization thing, because the rest of his family didn't go the same route. In fact, his twin sister was in the top 10 of her class. But Yoo Young-chul himself was not a good student. So he started hanging out with the wrong crowd. At Seoul shopping center, he stole a record, an LP, one of those things you used to play music from. He was caught, felt no remorse. He had a leadership role in school, and he abused the students at school. I read somewhere that he was obsessed with some older woman who lived near the school. But I'm reading in other sources, he was also obsessed with the wealthy house that was near his home. And I'm wondering if they're connected, if it's an older woman that was in a wealthy house, because he was very envious of this house. And this is when he was getting this consciousness that there was a class stratification.
Yeah, I've heard about that before, where there was someone wealthy when he was a teenager, or like in his early teens or maybe mid-teens. He started seeing the differences of class. He started observing it. And I remember reading about a house, or he became completely almost infatuated, but infatuated with anger. I remember reading angrily infatuated with the wealthy.
Yeah, he was. There he was. That was his first obsession, was that. Starting August 23rd, 1988, that was his time getting in and out of institutions. This first time he sent to juvie for trespassing at night. When he got out, he just told his friends that he had been working in Jeju, which is kind of funny. Okay, again, it's one of those things is later on when he's caught and his name is out that he's a mass murderer, he's a serial killer. The people that knew him back then and still knew him, they're like, oh, we had no idea. And a lot of people came out and said that. He was kind to his friends.
They always do, right?
Yeah, so unassuming. So yeah, they just said, "Oh, a lot of them didn't even know he had gotten into juvenile. They just thought he was in Jeju."
You can trace stuff like that with this, more 20th century. Dennis Rader was a church leader, had a family, 2 kids, and then became one of the, prolific serial killer over the course of 30 years. Jack the Ripper, one of the reasons he was never caught, it's believed, is because he was so unassuming. So, but and also,
Jeffrey Dahmer, there's that recent video that came out of him just talking to his parents around Thanksgiving, right before he was caught or something like that. Yeah. Just normal conversation. Yeah, this might be an apocryphal story. It almost sounds like a supervillain origin story. So he's going to the courthouse on April 1991. And okay, I'm going to say this right hand. so many sources I'm looking at, it's the dates are mixed up. I will tell you right offhand, the English language Wikipedia has a ton of errors on
Oh,
his article.
don't. Yeah, just a quick word of advice if anyone's willing to listen. You don't use Wikipedia for research.
Especially on Korea. What I tend to do, I'll tell you this, I'll tell you a little bit of the method I use for research is I tend to go to Wikipedia first because it's short, it's concise, and it helps me come out with an outline. Then I go into the Korean side, the Korean language side, and that's when I start delving into it. But even the Korean side is very mixed up, so I have to go and find the actual sourced articles themselves and look at academic journals. And this one, a lot of this was based on some academic journals, and then I've been finding a lot of articles. But then again, I have found, I think the more recent articles are more accurate than the articles that were written closer to that time, because back then everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And so there's a lot of mixed up information back then and a lot of inaccuracies. Right. In fact, I came across these two maps of one is where police thought the crimes happened, and the next one it says, oh, this is the accurate map where they actually happened. So the sources from when it was happening are still not as accurate. So I spent a lot of my time trying to nail down the exact dates for everything, and it's still mixed up. So just know that he kind of was in and out of institutions like 14 times before he started his career as a murderer. So anyway, this story is he's going to the courthouse in April 1991. On his way to court, he finds a wooden cross, as you do, and he picked it up. And he believed it was a revelation from heaven. He believed that it was a sign from God that he was going to be given probation. And it kept looking more and more that he would be released on probation. But instead, he was sentenced to prison. And right then he said, there is no God. And he broke the cross and threw it on the floor. And he said that was the reason he was so angry at religion. And you will find this later on. He tended to target areas in the early times. He tended to target areas around Christian churches. And later on, around a Buddhist temple. He wanted to defile religion, defile God. He wanted to just make people who were God-fearing people, or people who believed, people who are churchgoers, to make them feel that God could not protect them. June 1991, when he married Hwang Mo, who was people say that she was a masseuse, which in the media that was kind of saying that she was one of those happy endings types of masseuses, but it was also said by her friends that she was more of a skin masseuse at a cosmetics store. Yeah, they got together after when he rescued her while she was being chased by debtors.
So bizarre.
That's a weird one. I came across that one. Yeah.
That's that's fully out of a movie.
A lot of this really just sounds like movie script. It really does. And there was a movie made, but I don't think this was part of the movie. But and I don't want to romanticize it.
No.
Yeah. But because just a few months later, he was sentenced to 10 months in prison for stealing a guitar in 230,000 won. It's because he's addicted to theft, petty theft. Just he steals small things and keeps getting these prison sentences.
With 230,000 won, 1991 money.
Okay, that was more than.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that would be like 500,000 won.
Okay, today that's a movie ticket.
500,000 won?
No, today 230 is like a movie ticket.
Oh, 200. Yeah.
It's like a tomato. I'm just joking. I'm being exact. I mean, if you're listening to the show 20 years from now, you'd be like, oh, of course. Yeah, that's the price of a tomato. Yeah, he was released because of all this stuff. He was exempt. Oh, he was exempt from the military. He was colorblind, of course. He was exempt from the military.
Which is weird. Like, you know, can't tell your bullets apart. I don't know. It's just such a strange exemption.
Yeah. But he did try to get, he chose to still try to stay in the arts after he was released. He worked as a studio photographer, but he was also back to his old habits. Because this just occurred to me. He was using his art skills to create fake IDs.
Mm-hmm.
And so he created this fake ID, and he had this character he would do. I think it was Inspector Che. He would pose as this police officer, and he would extort money from shopkeepers who sold porn. That's how he was able to steal without getting caught, because, you know, you steal from criminals. Yeah. Yeah. But you could also see it. This is the beginning of his moral code delusion. This was where he was thinking that him committing these crimes, he was doing a good thing for society, or he was not a good thing for society, but within his moral code, he was doing things that fit with him. And you see this a good bunch with some types of serial killers, as they feel like they're punishing, they're helping punish people who violate this moral code. I keep going back to Sweeney Todd when I'm reading this, and even though I say I'm not into true crime, I'm not into these dark things, but yeah, Sweeney Todd is my favorite musical. But a lot of that is in here. Is Sweeney Todd is looking for revenge against society for everything that screwed him over, and how he's created this moral code that he feels that since society is evil, then it's his duty to punish all the sinners. And there's this one ultimate sinner that he wants to get, but since he can't get it right then, he will use surrogates in the place of that. And I find that, wow, that is, when I was reading Yoo Young-chul, I'm like, that's Sweeney Todd right there. So he also said he did have epilepsy. In the mid 90s, he was treated for epilepsy. And I kept getting different dates, so I'm just going to say summer 1994, his son was born.
Just quick before you say that, it's interesting that you say epilepsy, that he had epilepsy, because there have been studies that showed that, where was it? I think the study was done in Brazil, somewhere in South America, and over 70% of the test subjects with epilepsy showed to have lifetime psychiatric issues.
Oh.
So there is some research indicates that mental lobe epilepsy is what you have your notes there.
Yeah.
That's the TLE. Or like that's also temporal lobe epilepsy. Yeah, it's something like 70% in this one study anyway. 70% of those with temporal lobe epilepsy showed a very high frequency of psychiatric disorders.
Well, he did supposedly fear his epilepsy amongst other things, but he also used it as an excuse for other things. So yeah, his son was born in 94. So the 94 was his apex year, because he had to deal with the high of his son being born and also the lowest low, where his second brother committed suicide. He was only 32 and he jumped into the Han River. Supposedly the brother had a type of blindness and he couldn't stand it anymore. And so he killed himself. And yeah, I wrote in the notes that was his Sweeney Todd moment. And he just hated the world so much he wanted to kill someone out of a vague sense of revenge against the world. On the other hand, a lot of us go through crap like this and we choose not to do that.
Right.
It's almost sounded like Axl Rose talking about, oh, I had a bad childhood. I'm like, yeah, whatever, Axl. So did many of us. Go back to your mansion.
Right.
Yeah.
Go back to canceling concerts.
Yeah.
While you're on stage.
Fucking child. Oh my gosh, I've been doing these notes so much. Yeah, so he continued his habit of swindling, extorting money out of pornographers, but he was caught in 1995, fined 3 million won for selling the negatives of pornography, I guess it was. Also sentenced for impersonating a public official. So he's in and out. May 19th, 1999, he's released from Anyang prison. And he lasted for a bit up until March 2000, where he was arrested for impersonating a minor and raping a teenage girl in a car. While during his arrest, he faked an epileptic fit and was hospitalized. And in the hospital, he tried to escape. Put that in the margins because that'll come up in the future. October 2000, he was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months. Right after he was sentenced, his wife filed for divorce. She said, that's enough. Yeah. He was spending more time in prison than he was at home.
So, like, as if raping the teenage girl wasn't enough for her, she waited 9 months.
Yeah.
Class act.
Yeah. Anyway, it took a couple of years. The divorce was finalized in May 2002. But when this was happening, this is when he really broke. He stopped speaking to people. He avoided people. He had this plan to murder his ex-wife and son. Yeah, and this is when it started coming around. And he was still down. I'm reading different times. Some say it was in prison. Other times it says afterward, because he was released from Jeonju prison in September 11th, 2003. He was released from Jeonju prison, and he did see his ex-wife one time after that. And that was because he requested to see his son. And he said that when he saw his son's eyes, he changed his mind, decided not to kill his son, decided to only kill his wife. But even then, he couldn't bring himself to killing his wife. So he decided he wanted to kill other people as surrogates for that. And on top of that, he wanted to make it even more proper by murdering people who lived around churches. And it was said that, see, this is all these other accounts, because was it in the prison or was it afterward? Because the accounts that said that he decided this in prison said that he wrote the number of people he planned to kill on his prison wall. And he studied other serial killers to perfect his methods, and was inspired by Jong Do-young serial murders in Busan, which happened, it was in Busan, Ulsan, and South Gyeongsang-do, and from June 1999 to April 2000. So anyway, he was released from prison. Did see his child and ex-wife one time. Got a phone because, it's 2003. You got to have a phone. And he made sure he had a phone with the number 1818. How mature is that, Sean? How fucking mature is that?
Shibal.
Shibal. Basically saying like what? Shit.
Fuck.
In Korean.
Ship pal, but it sounds like Shiba. Yeah,
Yeah.
the swearing.
That's about as mature as, turning your calculator upside down to spell boobless. You know.
I spelled hiss. I was like, what does a snake say? Hiss.
Hiss.
I've never, yeah, that's what I used to spell with my calculator.
But he ended up being so obsessed with this number that it was his computer ID and his password. So not only is he immature, he's an idiot. I mean, this is a guy who, to this day, in every interview they say he's arrogant. He thinks that he's smarter than anyone else in the room. But your password was 1818? Dude, you're a person who you take pride at. He was a guy who took pride in how careful he was with his crimes. He was also a thief. And he didn't think anyone could figure out 1818, especially if his ID is 1818. Well, you go on the internet, hey, I'm 1818. Oh man, I don't like this guy. I'm going to try to hack his account. Let me try his password, 1818. Oh, boom, I'm in. Yeah, anyway. So I'm gonna crack that little illusion that this guy is actually as smart as he thinks he is, or his fan club thinks he is. And by the way, he does have a fan club, which is disgusting.
They all do.
Yeah. So he during this time he became fascinated with murder. I mean, all of his ties were cut. He no longer had a marriage, child to support. He's living with his mom, I think sister too. And so he wanted to figure out better ways, more efficient ways of killing people. So he experimented with dogs. What he'd do, he'd try to find dogs, and he'd bring them up to a mountain, and he'd experiment with killing them. And he started with stabbing the dogs, but he didn't like all the blood and the squirming, and worse off, he hated the hollering the dogs did. So he did some more experiments, and he figured out the best way was to just bonk them on the head, which is also how we slaughter livestock. I mean, we use a bolt that actually penetrates the skull, but it is bonking on the head, stuns them, and makes it easier to kill, to finish the job. Just saying. And so later on, that was his first murder. Okay, so how did he work out how he did his murders? He usually he had two major items: a jackknife that was 15 centimeters long that he bought for 30,000 won, and a 4-kilogram hammer. This was his signature weapon. It looked like Mjolnir. A very nasty version of Mjolnir, of Thor's hammer. What he did is he stole a sledgehammer from a construction site, the kind that has an octagonal head. With those types of hammers, the handle's too long. He can't put it in his bag. He can't hide it on himself. So he removed the handle, and he got like a short handle with a good grip, and he stuck it in the hole, and he used silicone to seal it in. Good strong epoxy to seal it in. I have a picture of it on the website. I have a few pictures on the website. By the way, if you could check this episode out on the website, do it with caution. I have crime scene photos on there. And he's a very strong guy. He did gymnastics, so he has strong wrists. He was doing shot put in high school. And if you've seen pictures of him in his youth, he had some guns on him. He was pretty fit. And so to go along with his two weapons, he had two types of gloves. He had suede gloves, which he used for covering up his fingerprints and climbing fences. And then he had coated work gloves. You know the kinds you see, the cloth gloves with the sticky, it looks like something painted on the palm side. These work gloves were used for getting good grip on the murder weapons. And for the first part, he had a black shoulder bag to keep all of his stuff in. Supposedly, he had a raincoat too. I've yet to see a picture of him. I don't think does he have. I have a picture of him on here. In the CCTV, does he have a raincoat? Yeah, you can't really tell. He doesn't really have a raincoat, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a long coat that he's wearing.
Yeah. People are associating with a raincoat. I think that was just mythology.
Yeah. We'll touch a little bit on mythology kind of in the last episode.
Yeah, we will. We're going to go into that in
folklore of serial killers. Yeah.
He started off by killing the wealthy elderly people, often in their homes, before he moved on to murdering women, particularly women who worked in the quote unquote entertainment industry, and not the kind you see on TV. His victims were bludgeoned to death. Yeah, pretty much every single one of his victims got the hammer. And several were dismembered. Oh, this is an old note. And supposedly they were cannibalized, but I'm going to talk about that in episode 3, whether or not they were. Anyway, so he was living with his mother and sister in Gongdok. And I'm working on a map because I'm reworking the map on everything. I do this all the time. I'm so obsessive when I do my research. I try to track down where everything happened, where everything was buried, where he lived and everything. I'm going to get that updated hopefully by the time this episode comes out. So if you go on the website, check it out. If not, write me at info@darksideofsoul.com and get on my butt to get that map out. All right, let's start. There are codes, names we use for these murders. This first murder was the Shinsadong murder in 2003, September 24th. This is Shinsadong in Gangnam-gu. He targeted these houses. And in Seoul, particularly, if you live in a standalone house and not an apartment or what we call a villa, you're considered pretty rich. And so that made yourself a target for Yoo Young-chul. His first victims were a Sungmyung University professor emeritus named Lee, who was 73, and his wife, also named Lee, who was 68. It was said that he chose this house. You chose this house because of a gray Grandeur car. He saw a person getting out of it and entering the house. He was also envious of houses with nice sunny gardens. And he had the strong desire to take from those who had what he didn't have. And so this was around Somang Church in Shinsadong. Now, he chose morning times, around late mornings, early afternoons, because that's when most people are at work and there's not much traffic outside. There's no rush hour. And when mostly only the elderly or the feeble are at home. Because, this shows how much of a great manly man this guy is. So he approached the house wearing the suede gloves. He observed what was going on there for 10 minutes. He silently climbed the fence and landed in the gravel part of the garden, changed to the coated work gloves, and he used his knife to open the door. Now, first thing he did was he wanted to see where everyone was. So he first went to the second floor, saw no one was there, and he noticed that the occupants were in the living room. He entered the living room, and there was Professor Lee, and he got up. You told him to sit down, but Professor Lee still stood up in a panic, and you immediately stabbed him in the neck. His wife, Mrs. Lee, freaked out, and she thinks he's a robber, and she starts pleading for her life, and she starts taking money from the closet to give him. And Yoo Young-chul says, do you think I'm doing this for money? And he immediately hits Mrs. Lee with the hammer on the head 3 times. Then Professor Lee is still squirming on the floor, and so Yoo hits him with the hammer 5 times on the head. So they've both immediately passed, and Yoo Young-chul wiped everything down. He locked the front door and exited the main gate. Then he realized he'd forgotten to bring his knife. So he ended up having to climb the wall. And since he didn't have his knife to get back in the door, he had to kick the door down, smash the doorknob. He retraced his steps and retrieved his knife. But this time he made it try to make it look like a robbery. So he started trashing the closet, but he didn't take any money. So it kind of it threw off the police. Sometime later, that was September 24th, October 9th. This is in Gugidong at 10:40 a.m. at a house near Yongwang Church. This was Hangul Day, but not a big holiday because everyone still went to work. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, it wasn't a holiday yet. It's a holiday now, but yeah, not then. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone still went to work. Started doing the same thing. As you can see, he's trying to perfect. He's trying to get better at what he's doing. Put on the suede gloves, went over the wall, used a knife to jimmy the front door open. There was an elderly woman, Kang Mo. She was 85. He struck her in the head in the bathroom and then stabbed her. She staggered out and he hit her again. Her daughter-in-law named Lee, who was 60 years old, came down. Yoo threatened her with a knife. He does this a lot. He threatens people with a knife. And that's really why he had the knife. He was using it more as a way to threaten people, not as a murder weapon. He was using it to kind of disable people. He sat her down on the living room sofa, and he said, "If you scream, I will kill you. Who else is upstairs?" And she said, her husband and her son. So Yoo tells her to bow her head, and she doesn't. So he kicks her in the stomach, stands over her, and kills her with the hammer. Grandson comes down, who's 35, and he's chuckling. And Yoo gets him and drags him back upstairs. But the grandson, or the Lee's son, the 35-year-old, he was autistic, and he didn't understand what was going on. So he didn't listen to Yoo's instructions. So Yoo also hit him with the hammer, and he beat him so hard that the brains oozed out. He was tended to be more brutal towards men as well. And he went searching for the husband, and he heard a dog barking on the way down to the basement, and so he fled the scene and tried to make it look like a robbery on the second floor. Try to make it look like someone was trying to break into the safe. And he was trying to find ways to make the police not connect it to the other murder. This time the police were able to get shoe prints, and they started a database search. And the media started connecting it to the Shinsadong case, but the police denied it. They said because they didn't want the public to panic, but I'll tell later why they didn't do it. They didn't connect it. Around a week later, October 16th, Samsung-dong, also in Gangnam-gu, near Happy Church, Haemokhan, I think it's Haemokhan Gyohe.
Haemokhan Gyohe, yeah.
Yeah, Happy Church. 12:30, lunchtime. Same method of breaking in. There's only one occupant, Mrs. Yoo Mo, who is 60. Dragged her to the bathroom and struck her with a hammer. And so this was later than the other times he's done it. So he seemed to be in a hurry. So he wasn't he wasn't as careful. And he left. And Mrs. Yoo was still alive when she was discovered by her son an hour later. And she was rushed to Samsung Medical Center, but she didn't survive. This time there were lots of footprints. So Yoo was really not careful. He was really rushing through it. And from the footprints, they were able to connect it to the previous murders. The media goes nuts. The police was still trying to deny that it was a serial killer, and they were instead investigating the family members and friends of the victims. And they were just nitpicking over the details, trying to say, "Oh no, this wasn't the same person." Until November, a little over a month later, November 18th. Hey, 18! Shipa. This is in Hyewadong, near Hyewa Cathedral. Same method of breaking in. This time he climbed the gas pipe to go to the second floor. He checked for occupancy up there, and he found Mrs. Bay, who was 53. She was the housekeeper. And he dragged her to the main bedroom. In the main bedroom, there was a grandfather named Kim, who was 87, and a small child. I've been trying to find out the age of the child, but I'm guessing under 3. Grandfather was startled and tried to get up, but he had a bad back. So you took advantage of that hesitancy and killed him with a hammer. Ms. Bay screamed and held the child. You ripped away the child and hit the housekeeper with a hammer. And the child was lying on the floor screaming. He brought the child to the living room, who was still screaming, and so he wrapped him up in a blanket to muffle the screams, almost to the point of suffocation. And then you went upstairs back to the bedroom to finish the job. He went back to the bedroom to finish the job. He tried to make it look like a robbery. And so he tried to open the safe on the second floor with a pickaxe and pruning shears. He would stick the pruning shears in the gap and use the pickaxe to jam the shears in to break the safe open. But in the process, the shears splintered and he split the knuckle of his right middle finger and was bleeding everywhere. He tried to stop the bleeding with tissue paper and Scotch tape, but it was going everywhere. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm leaving all this evidence." And he knew he'd be able to wipe it all up. So he decided to burn all the evidence. So he put newspaper and clothes around Ms. Bay and lit them with a lighter in the kitchen. And he waited outside to see if the house would burn down. It did catch fire, but it didn't burn down. It did destroy the bodies and the first floor bedroom and other parts of the house. One of the relatives, I think it was daughter-in-law, did rush in and rescue the child. That was a funny thing, is so much of my research, I'm like trying to find out what happened to the child. What happened to the child? And like only one thing I found said anything about what happened to the child.
Yeah. At least he got away. I mentioned that trauma though.
Yeah. Yeah. Precisely. This time police were able to get CCTV footage, and it's pretty clear of his back, and he's just casually just walking away. He's wearing a sweater from the victim's closet to hide the blood on his clothes. And for new technology at the time, they were able to figure out he was 168 centimeters tall. And they were able to figure out what shoes he wore from the ample footprints he left behind. So they were something called buffalo shoes. You ever heard of those?
Buffalo, like the brand Buffalo?
Is that what it is?
There's a brand of shoe called Buffalo. Yeah.
I'm not a shoe expert. I'm sorry, guys.
Not either,
okay, I'm pretty sure it's a brand called Buffalo shoes.
Yeah.
So the police distributed 10,000 leaflets asking for anyone that's 160 centimeters tall wearing buffalo shoes. You was keeping track of all the media at the time. So when he saw this, he cut up his shoes and threw them away. And that was it for that period of his murdering career. At that point, I think it just got too close to him. And he figured out that no matter how meticulous he was, breaking and entering into people's homes to kill them it was just too much. There was too much risk involved, especially with CCTVs, and it was the CCTV that spooked him. Because shoes could be changed, but his likeness couldn't. So he feared that the next time another CCTV would catch his face. So he gave up on breaking and entering and doing this type of crime on rich people. So this was the start of what many articles have called the gap period, where he changed his modus operandi. He was doing other things at the time. There's also rumors that he was doing more killings around the country. Not rumors, he actually said he was doing it, but the proof is not out there. But we will stop here for now. Next time we're going to talk about his next stage, where he was targeting women, and when he started becoming the ruthless, cold, efficient killer, and you could see his addiction to killing really starting to kick in. And the details are really disturbing. I'm not looking forward to doing this, but I think we should.
Yeah, and I remember that time as well. I'll talk a bit more about it in the next episode, but my girlfriend at the time, we were very close. We were dating more than 3 years, almost 4 years, my first 4 years in Korea. And we always met. We lived quite far apart. I lived in the satellites. I lived in Ilsan at the time. She lived in Hanam.
Yeah.
Quite far away. But yeah, like we would, when these murders that we're going to talk about next time were happening, we would meet for lunch, and then about 4 p.m, I would take her to the subway station, walk her home, and then I would go back to Ilsan.
Yeah.
People were afraid.
It was a scary time. There were a lot of murders happening during this period. This is right when I was coming to Korea and doing my research. There was not just Yoo Young-chul, there were other serial killers active during this period.
That's right. Yeah.
In the neighborhood I was living in. Yeah, scary. So anyway, we will continue this next time.
Yeah. Anyway, thank our patrons, though.
Thank our patrons. I know, it's like, let's go through here. Thank you, patrons, for supporting us. If you want to be a patron, you can join us at patreon.com/darksideofsoul for starting at just $5. You get a lot of extra material, and if you go to a top tier, which is $20 a month, you get swag, loot sent to your house. You get to join our private chat rooms, and we do Zoom parties, and you just get a lot of extra stuff. But if you can still just start at $5, it helps pay the bills, and tell your friends about us. That really helps us too. Please leave reviews on iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Subscribe if you haven't already. We want to thank our top tier patrons: Angel Earl, Joel Bonamini, Sharon Collin, Devin Hiffner, Minsuk Lee, Laura Casey, Jane Hargrave, Sarah Ford, Alex Radia, Ryan Barkabal, and Ashley Rigby. We also want to thank Sarak-san for our opening and closing music, which you can find on Bandcamp under Jeju Digital. Sean, do we have anything else to talk about?
I think that's it for today. That's
okay.
That's pretty heavy. I don't think we're being pushed down by that, so I don't think there's room for anything else.
Okay, guys. Thank you for listening. Until next week, stay spooky.
Part 2 next time. Good night.